Good morning and welcome to a video of the Federal Alliance of Southern Africa. Now, it's appropriate for me this morning to put this button on right here. And this button symbolizes a new start. It symbolizes a fresh beginning. Morning, Peter. It symbolizes a fresh beginning in South Africa. It's a fresh beginning that we need. So here on the 20th of May, Wednesday morning, welcome to our talk. And this morning we're going to speak about something that's very controversial, and it is called a just war. Now, for the Federal Alliance to form, there's going to be a lot of groupings that are going to be upset. A lot of groupings that are going to be upset because they didn't get their way. That's the one thing. They didn't get their way, what they wanted to have happened. They didn't get that. And the second thing is, they are not in charge. They don't have any power. Their power has been removed from them. And the third thing is, international groupings have no hold over the Federal Alliance. And they've also lost their power, and they also lose their way. They can't steal from the land anymore. Now we know that Southern Africa, or South Africa as it is poverty-stricken. We are living in a delusional world where we think that we are rich. You know, if you think you have a job, you can go to work every day, you can earn some money, and come home at 5 o'clock, stuck in the traffic wherever you are. You're renting your house, or you're living in your own house that you bought. You can still buy groceries in the month. You can still buy electricity, etc. But actually you are poor. You are poor because you're not free. You don't have freedom to build your own business. You don't have freedom. When I say build your own business, I'm talking about the restrictions of BBBEEE. You are not free to employ who you want. For the white men of South Africa, we are not free anymore to get any type of job that we are looking for. We are not free. And we see the corruption above us continuously stealing. I listened to a portion of Colleen Serfontein yesterday, and he's 100% correct in what he said. They have never built anything, they've only broken down. From the railways to Eskom to the post office, you name it, the Defence Force, it's broken. Our water supply is broken. Our electricity supply is broken. We know from the Federal Alliance's point of view that a political solution will not work. It cannot work. And I think back in the time of Benjamin Franklin in America and George Whitefield. I watched the movie last night. And I think back to that time, and I'm thinking, these men came and sat around, they had a meeting. It took them 3 to 4 weeks to come to some conclusion in that meeting. But at the end of that meeting, a new constitution was written for 13 colonies of the Americas. 13 colonies, and the best way that they could go forward was through a federal system. But they kept the governing section above the federal system. They kept the governing system. But what they did was they restricted the actions of the president through the workings of the governor of the area. The governor of the area had more say than the president of the United States. He had to go through Congress to get his actions followed through. First the House, and then the Congress. They had checks and balances. A huge load of people making sure that moral law was kept in sight in a just society. But when you look at America today, some parts are great, some parts are terrible. Some cities are falling apart. And you have two parties fighting it out continuously, the Democrats and the Republicans. You see, the Republicans, they were the first actual Democrats. The Republicans were the ones who started the democracy. And the Democratic Party is the party that rose up in between to try and get as much power for the governing body as they could, and less power for the states. That's the Democrats. Democracy. Everyone is free except we put a ruler over us that can do what he wants. That's democracy. Give the ruler so much power that he and his cabinet can do what they want. And the end of democracy is nations that struggle to be sovereign. Nations that struggle to be free. Nations that start to get persecuted. Europe is being persecuted at the moment. Take Europe, for example. Take England. England and Europe, they are in a persecution phase. They are flooded with the Muslim idea. They are flooded with Sharia law. They are flooded with things that their forefathers never knew. And the European people and the English, the Irish and the Scots, you got to shut up. You can't speak out against it. If you speak out against it, you are against what the people want. You see? So these lies are being perpetuated. And Europe is being persecuted. They just don't know it. Or they just can't see it. America is in a state of persecution continuously. They try to be the big policeman of the world. And they alienate nations. And because they have the biggest army, they force nations into what's the English word? Subjugation. They force people to bow down and say, yes, daddy. In South Africa, we have persecution. Black groups still fight black groups. They still do. And whites are marginalized even more and murdered. On the Cape Flats, we have gangsters persecuting normal people. So marginalized groups in South Africa are also being persecuted. The persecution is just subtle. It creeps up upon you, and then it affects your household, and then you don't know what happened, and then you don't have answers. That is the way of democracy, where the leadership are corrupted. Absolutely corrupted. Totally corrupted. And in a political system that won't change. That cannot change. It will never change. That's why we need the Federal Alliance of Southern Africa. Like the colonies of America, an alliance of states, not run by governors, but run with absolute authority by the kings. Absolute authority. With the Boer nation also run with absolute authority by the president and his cabinet. Same with the Cape. But all these groupings in their specific areas are bound by this single thought. We are part of an alliance. And there are certain precepts and principles in this alliance that functions together. If you don't do that, then we will take you. We will absorb you. We will overpower you. You see, in an alliance, you can't just make deals with other governments. You go through the Federal Alliance leadership, supervisory group. You want to benefit your people in a state? You go through the Federal Alliance. You don't just make deals. If the deals that you want to make is of such a nature that you're not going to lose ground, you're not going to lose minerals, your people are not going to lose, then those deals will be accepted. But if those deals do not benefit your people, do not benefit the alliance, then those deals will not be passed. Because in the grouping of the Federal Alliance, each state has representatives. And all the representatives must agree in at least a quorum. And otherwise those things will not be passed. And it must be bound by the moral, the common, and the cultural law, which is also very crucial. So there's a lot of things that we need to be able to look at. Now, one of the things that we're going to, good morning, Jan. One of the things that we're going to have to look at is what we call a just war. A just war. Now, we've got one of the biggest church fathers, Augustine of Hippo, in 354 to 430 AD. That's basically just before the Council of Nicaea sat with the Roman Catholics, things started. Augustine was a church leader, he was a bishop. And he systematically articulated the concept of a just war. Bellum justum. That's the Latin, bellum justum. His ideas laid the foundation for later Christian just war theory, which was developed by Thomas Aquinas and others. Augustine did not write a single treatise on the subject, but his views can be gathered from various works, including the City of God, De Civitate Dei, letters and other writings. Now, there are certain things that will justify a just war. Now, there's a few things that is absolutely important to understand when it comes to a just war. Augustine did not glorify war, but saw it as a consequence of human sinfulness. It is greed, the lust for power, the lust for money that makes men fall. Peace is the ultimate desire, but sometimes war is necessary to restore peace, justice, and order. See? That's the just cause. But there must be a moral reason. You can't just go and fight. There must be defense against aggression. In other words, outside influences. There must be restoration of violated justice. There must be protecting the innocent from harm. Wars of conquest or vengeance are unjust. And we see that. We see America doing many of these things. Unjust wars. Conquest and vengeance. They did it over Libya because Libya didn't want to do what they wanted to do. They did it in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. They tried it in Vietnam. They lost in Vietnam. They actually lost everywhere. Now, there has to be the right motives. You have to want to secure peace. John, how are you doing? Love for the enemy must still guide the actions. You know what? That's the most important thing. You cannot have a just war if there's no love involved. You have to love the people. And in South Africa, we have a problem. There are many Caucasian people. Let's call them white people. This wall behind me is white. I've never seen a white person in my life. I'll freaking run if I see a white person. And the same with a black man. I've never seen a black man in my life. One or two people said they have seen somebody like that. But I've never really seen a black man. Black African. They're all dark brown. But here in South Africa, we have this thing. The whites are the minority. 50% plus of the whites are in poverty. Yet, the cause of the destruction of this country is still placed on our shoulders. Yet, we have to still come with the action of when you do something like this, there has to be love involved. Love for the enemy. Now, what does love for the enemy mean? Love for the enemy is very simple. What you want for yourself is what you want for other people. If you have a piece of land, if you have a house, if you have a car, you should want that for your neighbor. What else is love for the enemy? Love for the enemy is to speak the truth in sincerity. Love for the enemy is to give them the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's the only truth that makes sense. And it's backed by history and archaeological evidence. It's also backed by the moving power of the Holy Ghost. That's what's love for the enemy. You see? Love for the enemy is not kuchi-kuchi-ku. That's not love for the enemy. So you must have that. The aim should be correction, not destruction. The aim should be correction, not destruction. Only lawful rulers, not private individuals or rebels, have the right to declare war. Only lawful rulers. Now, I am a lawful ruler in the Boer community. I am a lawful leader of the Federal Alliance of Southern Africa. I have a board of 10. I have not been voted in or any such thing in this country. You see? But I cannot declare a just war. The kings of this nation and the nations can declare just war. Because it was their land, their original land, that has been corrupted. That's why we need the kings. The kings can declare just war. This prevents chaotic, unauthorized violence. If a king says, let's say a king says in Venderland to his people, we stand back, we watch, we do not intervene, then that's what they do. It prevents unauthorized violence. War should only be as a last resort. Innocence must not be targeted. Excessive violence or cruelty is forbidden. You know, when the Buddha tried to do something stupid in the beginning of the year 2000, it wasn't a just war. We could understand their anger, we could understand what they went through, but it wasn't a just war. Because innocents were targeted. Stupidity reigned. We're going to blow up this dam. We're going to blow up this pipeline. We're going to blow up this electrical substation. Stupidity. That is not a just war. We do not seek peace in order to be at war. We go to war that we may have peace. It is in the injustice of the opposing side that lays on the wise man the duty to wage war. Listen to this. It is the injustice of the opposing side that lays on the wise man the duty to wage war. The passion for inflicting harm, the cruel thirst for vengeance, an unpacific and relentless spirit, the fever of revolt, the lust of power, and such like things, all these are rightly condemned in war. So Augustine did a good job, but later a man with the name of Thomas Aquinas in 1225 and 1277 built on these ideas, and even later Francisco de Vitoria and Francisco Suarez, 1548 to 1617, further developed the theory. So, there are three primary conditions that lead to war: defense against aggression, punishing evil, and restoring justice. Ask yourself this question: are we there? Are we there? Defense against aggression, punishing evil, restoring justice. Are we in that position? All right? The goal must be peace and justice. Now, here's some extra conditions, additional conditions. It's called the Indus et de Iure Belli. This is important notes because we are in this space at the moment in South Africa. This was done by Vitoria. Probability of success. No just war if defeat is certain. If you're going to lose, you don't enter into such a thing. Proportionality. The anticipated good must outweigh the harm caused. Now, world leaders use that to justify them entering other countries. Good will prevail. We see that now with Iran. Good will prevail. Good. We've got to blow them up. Then good will prevail. There has to be other ways to rid a nation of a snake. Last resort, all peaceful solutions, diplomacy, arbitration must be exhausted. The courts are not on our side. They want to get rid of the Constitution, Article 235. They want to take away the land without compensation. And we can go on. The list is longer than my arm. Then we have what we call the jus in bello, justice during war. Discrimination. Innocents, non-combatants must not be targeted. Point number 1. Proportional force. Avoid excessive destruction beyond military necessity. You don't just go and blow up a bridge. No atrocities. No massacres, no rape, no wanton pillaging to steal. Now listen to this. Against unjust wars. Vitoria argued that neither paganism nor territorial expansion justified war against indigenous people. Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. This is what happened. Empires were built like this. They expanded their territory by harming the indigenous peoples. They took land. They didn't care. They did it for the king, for the queen. Only direct harm or aggression could legitimize war. Direct harm or aggression. Now I'm just going to talk about this one portion and then we'll leave it until Friday. We're looking at medieval war, the old type of war, against modern adaptations, okay? While medieval theologians focused on moral and theological reasoning, modern just war theory, i.e. in international law, secularizes these principles. In other words, they put it out there. The medieval side, I'm going to read the medieval side, then I'm going to read the modern side. The medieval side, based on natural law and theology. The modern, based on secular international law. Left, punishing evil as a just cause. Self-defense. UN Article 51. Self-defense. Isn't it self-defense when you want to get rid of the corruption that is above you? Isn't it self-defense when the police are corrupted and your defense force is corrupted? Isn't it self-defense when they're destroying your home? Isn't that called self-defense? Church authority could influence war back in the day. Today, sovereign states decide with UN oversight. Now, here's the thing. We have the international law, the locus standi. We have it. It took 12 years to get that thing sorted out, but we have it. We have international law on our side. So the sovereign states need to decide. And sovereign states are built by giving the monarchies back to the kings, the original land. That's how you get these sovereign states. Non-combatant immunity, moral duty, civilian protection is codified in the law. But we see that did not happen. It didn't happen in Lebanon. It didn't happen in Palestine. Civilian protection, there was none. Because their people were even evil enough to use these people as shields. But their own people should have stood up against them, but they couldn't. They were indoctrinated. Key quotes from medieval theologians. Aquinas. Those who wage war justly aim at peace, and so they are not opposed to peace. Victoria. Difference of religion is not a cause for a just war. No. Suarez. But we see that with the Muslims, don't we? Difference of religion is not a cause for just war. However, we see that in Islam. Suarez. Innocent persons may never be slain. Islam. Even incidentally, unless their death is unavoidable. That is wrong. Unless their death is unavoidable. If their death is unavoidable, you do not expedite the action. You do not. You seek a different path. So there's a legacy of just war. The medieval refinements of just war theory remain influential in international law, military ethics, and Catholic social teaching. It's actually taught in the Catholic social teaching. It's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church 2309. The theory of a just war is actually taught. It's taught. So we have this. Now, what we will do Friday is we will look at the just war on a failed state. We know the state is corrupted. We know that they have failed. And we know that they are clinging onto power as much as possible. We do not want to wage war against the corrupt leaders. We do not want that. We simply want to establish sovereign states through international law and then secede. What do we do after that? We defend our territory. That is the basic premise. Sovereign states, led by monarchs, they have the right to declare a just war. The international right to break away from the mother body, We have that. Then the final action, once secession has taken place, of all the states and have fallen under the federal umbrella, we have the right to defend our territory. And those who are opposed to the idea that are in our states are subject to a just war. It's a mouthful. There's a mondful. But that's how it's supposed to work. No political instability. None. No political parties. None. Governance by the people, for the people. That's how it should be. So let me go over that again quickly, just to summarize. Sovereign states, monarchs, and in our case, the Boer nation, a Boer state with a president and a cabinet. The Cape, a cabinet, and whatever they want to call their leader, a president or whatever. That concerns that's the colored people, white people, and the other peoples living there. They form a conglomerate situation. They have to, there's no other way. Sovereign states, international law, the right to secede, secession, defending your territory. That is the blueprint for success in South Africa. That's the blueprint. There's no other way. There's just no other way. In any case, we want to be free, don't we? Freelanders, sovereign people. And after that, we are Buddha, English, Irish, Portuguese, Tswana, Zulu, Pedi, Venda, whatever. But first we need to be free. Free subjects, sovereign subjects in our own territory. That is a basic sovereign right. A basic sovereign right. Self-governance is a basic sovereign right. We want that. That's what the Federal Alliance is all about. And only with God is unity strength. Only with God is unity strength. And I want to use this quote of George Whitefield. Awake, O sleeper. Awake, O sleeper, so that the sun of God may shine on your face. We need to awake. Have a fabulous and a blessed day. Send out all these videos to all the English-speaking people, wherever you may see them, know them, whatever, and let's get this bus going. This can be done and finished in 3 months' time. I've been saying that from the beginning, and we're now into our 4th year. We started in 2015, but in 2022, we actually started moving in South Africa. Be blessed.